He's watching me. I know it. That was the first thought that echoed in my mind when I spotted the shadow in the hallway again. Fourth night in a row. Same hour. Same creak on the floorboards outside my apartment door, as if someone was standing there too long, doing nothing, just listening. The first night, I told myself it was the plumbing. The second, I considered maybe one of the tenants got lost or drunk. By the third, I thought I was going crazy. Tonight, I knew better. My name is Claire Mitchell. I'm 29 years old, and until 6 weeks ago, I was relatively invisible. A graphic designer working from home, minding my own business, living in a small one-bedroom apartment in the South Loop of Chicago. I had my plants, my job, and my own quiet space. Then the rent notice arrived. I still remember the sound of the paper sliding under the door, a sharp whisper against the hardwood floor. I walked over thinking it was a flyer or something for maintenance. Nope. It was a formal letter, typed in bold and aggressive font. As of next month, your rent will increase to $2,950 per month, effective immediately due to market conditions. No explanation. No conversation. No grace period. My jaw had locked when I read it, my hands trembling as I flipped the page to see if there was a mistake. There wasn't. Just a signature at the bottom. Morris B. Lantham, building owner and landlord. Morris had never liked me. I didn't know why. I barely interacted with him. But from the moment I moved in 2 years ago, he always gave off this smug, dismissive energy. A portly man in his late 50s, with slicked-back white hair, thick eyebrows, and the kind of breath that made you step back instinctively. He dressed like he was important but spoke like someone who enjoyed reminding you weren't. He never made eye contact when I greeted him. Never returned my holiday cookies like the other neighbors did. Once, when my smoke alarm wouldn't stop chirping, I called for help and he told me, maybe if you paid on time like the rest, I'd send someone faster. But I always paid on time. I even had receipts. I should have known then he had a problem with me. I tried confronting him about the rent hike, but the conversation was less a conversation and more like walking into a wall. I don't owe you explanations, Claire, he said, not even bothering to step out from behind his office door. That unit has a beautiful view. You've been getting a discount for too long. A discount? I've never missed a payment. And none of my neighbors' rents went up. That's none of your business, he said flatly, then smirked. Besides, if you can't afford it, I'm sure someone else will. And that was that. He shut the door, leaving me in the hallway, feeling like dirt under his overpriced Italian loafers. I walked back to my apartment in a daze, my heart pounding. What had I done to deserve this? I spent the rest of the evening in silence. I didn't call anyone. I didn't cry. I just sat at my tiny dining table staring at the lease I had printed 6 months ago when I renewed. It clearly said rent was locked at $2,200 for the year. This wasn't just unfair, it was illegal. But the thing about landlords like Morris is they count on you not knowing that. They count on fear, on exhaustion. They count on you not having the time, energy, or legal knowledge to fight them. What they don't count on is someone like me, someone with nothing left to lose. The hallway shadow returned the next night. I stayed up late with my laptop, looking up tenant rights, emailing legal aid clinics, and screenshotting everything. And then, at exactly 2:07 a.m., the floorboard creaked outside again. This time, I didn't move. I just listened. No footsteps. No voices. Just a long silence. And then, very slowly, the click of retreating footsteps. I counted them 6, then a pause. Then 2 more. I stood up slowly and peered through the peephole. Nothing. But I knew what I heard. It wasn't until I spoke to Ms. Eleanor in 3B that I realized something was very, very wrong. Eleanor was in her 70s, a sweet lady who used to be a college English professor. She always wore floral scarves and carried a tote bag filled with books she reread just to argue with the margins again, as she put it. I ran into her in the laundry room a week after the notice and gently asked if her rent had gone up. She looked confused. No, dear. Mine's been the same for 3 years. What about anyone else on this floor? Not that I've heard, she said, lowering her voice. Though I did hear Morris arguing with a man on the phone last week. Sounded like trouble. What kind of trouble? She hesitated. He was yelling about foreclosure. Kept saying something about needing cash flow. Honestly, I think he's in over his head. That explained the rent hike. He wasn't targeting everyone, just me.
Why?
I didn't have time to explore it that day, but that night, I found something I wasn't supposed to. I was scrolling through old emails, looking for anything I might have missed in my lease, when I noticed something odd. An attachment sent 3 months ago, no subject, no message, just a file named Floor 4 Upgrades _budget. I opened it out of curiosity. It wasn't about upgrades. It was a spreadsheet detailing projected increases in unit rents, but only 2 units were listed. Mine and the penthouse. What made my stomach turn was the notes section next to my apartment. Likely won't fight it, single, no family, works from home, isolated. Good target. My chest seized up. Target? He'd profiled me. Assumed I'd take it quietly. That I'd disappear if pushed. That was the night I stopped being afraid and started planning. I began documenting everything. Every creak. Every email. Every whispered insult in the hallway when he thought I wasn't listening. I set up a second phone facing the peephole to catch any shadows. I placed a sticky note on the inside of my door, right above the lock, to see if it shifted while I was gone. And yes, it did. 3 times in 1 week. But I said nothing. Not yet. Because the most powerful weapon I had was silence. And knowledge. That's how you beat a predator like Morris. You let him think he's still winning. There was a moment that changed everything, a moment that confirmed my worst fears and sparked the beginning of the end. It was late, maybe around 11 p.m. I was returning from a friend's house across town and had to walk the last few blocks in the dark because my Uber dropped me early due to traffic. As I turned the final corner, I saw something that made me freeze in my tracks. Morris, standing outside the front entrance of our building. He didn't see me at first. He was facing the street talking to someone on the phone. I ducked behind a tree and quietly listened. I can't get more out of her, he snapped. She's too smart.
She's looking into it now.
I think she's starting to catch on. He paused. No, I haven't pushed her. Not yet. But if she doesn't pay the new rate next week, I'll find a reason to evict her. I'll make it clean. Trust me. I felt the blood drain from my face. So it was real. He wanted me out. And he was willing to manipulate the system to do it. I backed away slowly, holding my breath. When I got back to my apartment that night, I didn't cry. I wrote. Every word I remembered from his phone call. Every incident that had led up to it. Every fear that had turned into fact. Then I attached it all to a single email draft I titled, If Anything Happens to Me. It was time-stamped, cloud-stored, and set to send automatically if I didn't log in after 48 hours. Let him try me. I was ready now. And when I was done, I went to sleep with the first real smile I'd had in weeks. You'd think after that night, I would have packed my bags and run. I didn't. I stayed. Because fear had started to turn into something else, clarity. Every moment Morris tried to push me deeper into the shadows, I dug myself out with evidence. Every time he underestimated me, I became more dangerous. The clock was ticking for him.
He just didn't know it yet.
But I did. I started recording everything, quietly, subtly, methodically. I bought a mini voice recorder that clipped into my purse and left it on every time I passed his office. If I ever needed to cross his path, I made sure to keep my voice sweet and calm, the way he liked it, docile. Unthreatening. That mask worked perfectly. Because Morris had a habit of talking down to people he thought were weak. And the more comfortable he got, the sloppier his words became. You people just don't get it, he muttered once during a casual run-in in the hallway. This building's mine. I can do whatever I damn well want with it. And if someone's too slow to keep up with the price, well, tough luck. I smiled. My recorder didn't. But tension wasn't just rising inside me. It was thickening around the building. I began to notice new locks on some doors, cameras appearing where there hadn't been any motion sensors installed in hallways. Most tenants thought it was added security. I knew better. It was surveillance.
Control.
I overheard one tenant, a young couple on 4D, whispering in the elevator. "Did you hear about that guy in 5C?" the girl said, nervously glancing around. "He moved out." No, he was forced out. Morris claimed lease violations. But Jordan said he saw them screaming at each other last week in the hallway. It wasn't just me anymore. This wasn't random. It was patterned. And all the patterns led to one person, Morris B. Lantham. There was another moment, subtle, but disturbing. I received a letter in my mailbox. No return address. No name. Just a folded piece of notebook paper, written in blocky all-caps handwriting. "Watch yourself. He knows." My stomach dropped. I looked around the lobby. No one. I scanned the hallway. Empty. I felt the paper again in my hand, its edges soft and torn, as if it had been folded and refolded multiple times before being slipped into my mailbox. Was it a threat? A warning? Or, worst, a confession? I didn't know. But I knew one thing. I wasn't crazy. Something dark was happening inside this building. And Morris wasn't just involved. He was orchestrating it. Around this time, I started waking up to strange things. My front doormat disappeared. My balcony plant, one I'd nurtured for months, was suddenly ripped out, the soil scattered across the patio. My electric bill spiked to 3 times its normal amount even though I hadn't changed anything. When I asked the building's electrician, he raised an eyebrow and said, "Your usage log looks tampered with. I'd get someone to check that out if I were you." Things were shifting beneath the surface. Quiet sabotage. Subtle chaos. But it wasn't just the physical things. I started losing time. One evening, I blinked and realized I'd been sitting on the couch for over 3 hours without remembering what I was thinking. Another night, I walked into the bathroom and saw water running, even though I hadn't used the sink all day. Was it stress? Sleep deprivation? Gaslighting? Or was someone trying to break me down, piece by piece? The turning point came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. I had gone to a local cafe, my safe place just to work and breathe. While sipping my latte, I glanced through the window and saw a figure across the street. Morris, standing beneath an awning, umbrella in hand. But he wasn't just there randomly. He was staring at me, directly, unblinking. I didn't move. Neither did he. Just 30 seconds of unbearable eye contact across the street. Then slowly he smiled and walked away. I rushed home, heart pounding, and tore through every drawer until I found my spare camera, the one I used for design projects. I aimed it at the front door, then one at the living room window, and one more hidden beneath my bookshelf. Because I realized something I didn't want to admit. He'd been inside. Not once. Not twice. Multiple times. Without my consent. Without my knowledge. And maybe while I was sleeping. I barely slept that weekend. The air inside the apartment started to feel heavy, stale, oppressive. Even my cat, Willow, refused to go near the front hallway anymore. She'd hiss, stare at the door, then retreat into the closet. Animals know things. I started keeping a kitchen knife beside my bed. Not because I thought I'd use it, but because I needed to feel like I had a choice. That night, I received a voicemail from a blocked number. I didn't answer at first. I let it go to recording. When I listened back, it was 7 seconds of silence. Then, the breath. A long, shaky inhale, followed by, "You should have left when you had the chance."
Click.
I sat frozen on the floor, heart hammering in my chest. I forwarded the voicemail to my cloud drive, then sent a copy to a friend, just in case something happened. This wasn't just rent anymore. It was war. I went to the leasing office the next morning to confront Morris. But he wasn't there. Instead, a woman I'd never seen before sat behind the glass window. Blonde hair in a tight bun, cold blue eyes, and a clipboard that looked too clean. "Can I help you?" she asked flatly. "Where's Morris?" "He's out for the week. I'm overseeing tenant affairs while he's away." "My name's Ellen." Ellen. A name too neat for someone so unreadable. I asked her about the voicemail. She blinked. "We don't monitor tenant communications. Maybe you should call the police?" "I have. They said without proof of forced entry or visible threats, it's a civil matter. Then it sounds like there's nothing we can do, she said with a thin smile. I knew then she wasn't on it. Or, at least, protecting him. And that meant I was alone again. Or so I thought. That night, I received an anonymous email from a burner account. Subject line: You're not crazy. Inside was a single message. Check the wall behind your fridge. Look for the notch in the panel. He did it to others, too. My blood ran cold. I stared at the email for 5 minutes, unsure if it was a trick, a trap, or the breakthrough I needed. Finally, hands shaking, I pulled the fridge away from the wall.
Dust. Grease.
Wires. And then something caught my eye. A tiny notch in the drywall, barely noticeable unless you were looking. I pressed it.
Click.
The panel opened, just half an inch. Inside, a black device the size of a lipstick tube, blinking red. A camera, hidden, watching me, recording everything. I fell to my knees. This wasn't paranoia. This was premeditated. The next 24 hours passed in a blur. I contacted a lawyer friend from college, Renee, and sent her everything. The footage, the device, the emails, the voicemail. Her reply came quickly. Claire, this is serious. If this goes to court, he's facing criminal charges, not just civil. Do not confront him alone. I'm getting you help. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope. Real, tangible, electric hope. But I also knew, if Morris figured out what I'd found, I might not make it to court. Because people like him? They don't go down without burning the whole building first. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room, lights off, eyes fixed on the door. Knife beside me, camera rolling. Every creak made me flinch. Every shadow looked like him. At exactly 3:11 a.m., I heard the front lock jiggle. Then stop. Silence. Then footsteps retreating. I stayed completely still. Not out of fear this time. Out of strategy. Because now I had everything I needed. And Morris? He had no idea what was coming next. I thought I knew what I was dealing with. A greedy landlord. A manipulative man drunk on power. A bully hiding behind legal loopholes. But the truth? The truth was more vile than I ever imagined. It started with an unexpected knock on my door the next morning. Not loud, just firm. Deliberate. I looked through the peephole. An older man in a charcoal blazer. Not Morris. Not anyone I recognized. Claire Benton? He asked when I cracked the door open. Yes. He slid a card toward me. Peter Landry, private investigator. I was hired by someone who knows what you're going through.
Can we talk?
I hesitated, then nodded. We sat in the living room. He glanced around, absorbing every corner like it might speak back to him. Then he said it. I've been building a case against Morris Lantham for over 6 months. Peter showed me photos, records, names of tenants who had mysteriously vanished from the building without a trace, people who'd complained about rent increases, refused upgrades, or tried to push back. One woman, Fiona Glass, had documented mold and wiring issues. She filed a complaint with the city. 2 weeks later, she was evicted for a safety violation. Another man, Rick Holland, had been injured after a ceiling pipe burst over his stove. Morris sent him a notice blaming unauthorized equipment and raised his rent by $600. But it didn't stop there. Peter leaned in, eyes grim. Claire, I think he's been recording tenants illegally.
Not just you.
He's used footage, taken without consent, to blackmail others. Sometimes to scare them into leaving. Other times, to humiliate them. I felt bile rise in my throat. That camera behind my fridge was just one of many. That night, I couldn't stop shaking. I sat in the shower for almost an hour, letting the water numb my skin. All I could think about were the quiet moments I thought were private, crying on the couch, changing clothes, whispering to Willow when the nights got too hard. And someone was watching. For how long?
How much did he see?
How much did he save? I crawled into bed, wrapping myself around Willow like a shield. My body exhausted, but my mind screaming. I didn't feel like Claire anymore. I felt like a file folder. Open. violated, exploited. The next morning, I woke up to an email. Subject: nice try. No text. Just an attachment. I knew I shouldn't open it, but I did. It was a photo of me, taken from inside my apartment. I was sitting on the floor, back to the couch, arms wrapped around my knees. The timestamp was from 4 days ago, a moment I'd completely forgotten. Except now it lived on his device. And he was showing me. He knew I'd found the camera. This was his warning shot. I forwarded the photo to Peter and Renee. Peter responded first. He's panicking. That's good. But we need more. Look for anything, emails, hidden folders, external drives. That same night, I made the hardest decision I've ever made. I went into Morris's office. He was still away. Ellen had locked the main door, but I noticed something 2 nights earlier when she left. She didn't always fully shut the back entrance. So I slipped in. I held my breath the whole time, every step on the creaky floor feeling like a gunshot. His office was immaculate, too immaculate, like a room meant to impress, not to work in. But behind the art on the wall, I found a safe. And behind the safe, a vent panel that wasn't screwed in all the way. Inside, 2 USB drives. A hardbound notebook labeled in black ink. Confidential, T-Unit. I didn't have time to read. I shoved everything into my bag and ran. Back home, I locked every door, closed every blind, and plugged the USB into my laptop. It was worse than I thought. Footage. Dozens of folders, each named by apartment number and date range. Mine, 4B, had over 57 video files. I opened one. There I was, pouring cereal, talking on the phone with my mom, changing clothes,
Crying.
every part of my life filed neatly in his archive. I couldn't breathe, but I kept scrolling, because something didn't make sense. One folder was labeled unmarked, legal file. Inside, documents, contracts, payoff statements. I opened a PDF titled Case Settlement, Glendale Development Fund. And that's when everything clicked. Morris hadn't just been blackmailing tenants. He was pushing them out to make space. For someone. For something. Peter confirmed it the next morning. Claire, this isn't just about rent. He's been working with a development firm, selling off apartments one by one under fake violations so they can gentrify the building. That notebook I found? It detailed every step. Code violations he'd faked. Inspector bribes. Names of lawyers. Even internal emails. But there was one name that made my blood run cold. Ellen Myers. The leasing assistant. She wasn't just working with Morris. She was his wife. Legally separated, but still in business together. Fronting a shell corporation called Mayer Group Holdings. Everything suddenly made sense. The fake professionalism. The way she appeared, only when tenants pushed too hard. She was the cleanup crew. And I had just stepped into the lion's den. I wanted to take it all public right away. But Peter stopped me. Wait until he comes back. Let him think he's in control. That's when you press record. So I waited. I pretended. I played dumb. And every day, I felt something inside me harden. My voice. My stare. My boundaries. By the time Morris returned 3 days later, I wasn't scared of him anymore. I was starving for justice. He knocked on my door like nothing had happened. That usual smug smile.
Claire.
Just checking in. Haven't seen your rent payment. I held the door open. Wider than usual.
Come in, I said.
He stepped in confident. Too confident. He walked into the living room, casually glancing around. I pressed record on my phone behind a stack of books. Then I said, "You've been inside my place before, haven't you?" He blinked.
What? No.
Why would you say that? Because I found your camera.
He paused.
A flicker of panic. Then a slow smile. You shouldn't snoop where you don't belong. And just like that, he admitted it. On tape. Then came the reveal. I know what you're doing with Mayer Holdings, I said calmly. I know about Ellen. The eviction scams. The cameras. The blackmail. His face turned white. How did you? I took out the USB drive and held it up. His eyes widened. Where did you get that? You left the back door unlocked, I said. He lunged, but I was faster. I grabbed the pepper spray I'd taped beneath the couch and aimed straight at his face. He screamed, stumbling backwards, clutching his eyes. I pushed him out the door and slammed it shut. Then I called the police. It took 4 minutes for the sirens to arrive. By then, he was gone. But I had everything: footage, files, voice recordings, emails, contracts. Renee got a judge to issue an emergency restraining order. Peter filed a full report to the Attorney General's office. The building shook with whispers the next morning. Tenants were talking. People who'd been too scared started coming forward. Stories. Photos. Names. I wasn't alone anymore. But the final twist? It came 1 week later. An email from a burner account. Subject: You think it's over. Message: He's not the only one who watched you. Attached: a still image. Another shot of me. But it wasn't from Morris's angle. It was from above, like a ceiling vent. And in the corner of the image, a tiny red smiley face drawn in the corner of the wall. I ran to my ceiling, pulled off the vent cover, and found another camera. This one wasn't Morris's. Someone else had been watching, too. I wanted this to be over. I thought I had done everything right. Exposed Morris, gathered evidence, gone to the police, lawyered up. But that final photo proved something devastating. There was another player in the game. Someone Morris didn't even know about. Someone watching both of us. And that changed everything.
Peter called me that night.
His voice had the clipped sharpness of someone who knew something and didn't want to say it outright. Claire, listen carefully. That camera you found in the ceiling, do not touch it. Do not alert anyone else. I already pulled it down. Silence. Okay. Then you need to leave. I blinked. Leave?
What? Now. Right now.
Don't pack. Don't second guess. Just take your phone, your laptop, your dog, and go. You're not safe there anymore. I didn't ask questions. I threw on jeans, grabbed Willow, slung my laptop bag over my shoulder, and walked out the door without looking back. Peter had arranged a temporary place for me in Brooklyn, a private brownstone owned by one of his former clients. I stayed there with Willow, shaking as I sat on a stiff couch in a stranger's home, blinds drawn, and every creak in the walls sounding like a warning. My hands trembled as I clutched a mug of tea I didn't drink. Peter arrived an hour later. He dropped a thin manila folder on the coffee table. Inside, screenshots, printed emails, bank records, a name I hadn't seen before, Jonathan M. Kent. Not Morris. Not Ellen. A third person. Peter's face was pale, even under the warm lighting of the brownstone. Jonathan Kent is Morris's silent partner.
Tech guy.
Used to build surveillance software for defense contractors. He was quietly funding this entire operation. The cameras, the real estate deals, the data storage, it's all tied to him. I swallowed hard. Why me? Why target me like this? Peter looked away for a beat. Then he said it. Because you used to work for someone they were targeting. Your former nonprofit. The one that exposed housing corruption 5 years ago? Jonathan was on that list. You helped publish it. It was like getting punched in the lungs.
I remembered it now.
I'd helped compile financial data for that report. Cross-checked emails. Filtered donor names. I hadn't even written the final article. But I had helped expose him. And now he was making me pay. You were on their list for a long time, Peter said. But it wasn't until Morris got desperate that they activated your file. You weren't just a tenant. You were a threat. My blood turned to ice. This whole thing, it wasn't just rent increases, I said slowly. It was revenge.
Peter nodded.
And you're not the only one. We spent the next few days building what we called the last file. The complete dossier. Everything. Every video, every contract, every message Morris or Kent had sent. Every illegally obtained piece of footage. Every manipulated document. A full timeline traced back years. We were going to bring it forward, this time publicly. Peter warned me. You won't be able to go back to a normal life after this. I don't want the old life anymore, I whispered. The day we went public, I barely slept. Renee helped us submit the entire file to multiple news outlets simultaneously. The Times, The Post, a dozen respected blogs. Within hours, the headlines exploded. Landlord blackmail ring exposed, surveillance, scams, and targeted harassment. Former housing watchdog becomes target in shocking retaliation plot. Reporters flooded our phones. Tenants from all over New York started reaching out with similar stories. And then the threat started. My email inbox filled with anonymous messages. One read, "Snitches don't sleep well." Another, "You think you ended it. But this isn't over. Not by a long shot." I started seeing the red smiley face again. On corners of buildings. In graffiti. On the back of a dollar bill I got at a deli. It wasn't just Morris and Ken anymore. This was bigger. Peter's face hardened when I showed him. They've built something, a network. Not just here. Other cities. Other properties. And now they know we know. I decided to take the final step. Confront Morris. One last time. Not in secret. Not hiding. Face to face. We met in a courthouse hallway. His trial date had been fast-tracked due to the pressure from the press and the sheer scale of evidence against him. He looked thinner. Unshaven. But his eyes burned with something venomous. "You ruined my life," he hissed. "No," I said quietly. "You destroyed your own. I just turned the light on." He stepped closer. "You think you've won? You're a bug to them. An inconvenience. You don't even know what you stepped into." I leaned forward, matched his tone. "Then let them come. I've lived through hell, Morris. There's nothing left to take from me." He flinched. That's when I realized the power had shifted. He wasn't in control anymore. That night, I got a call from Peter. They froze Kent's assets. Interpol is involved now. Some of the shell companies went through offshore accounts. This may become international. I sat down, shaking, overwhelmed. I wasn't just a tenant anymore. I was the woman who cracked the code, who exposed the rot,
Who fought back?
but at a cost.
The building?
It's now under city protection. Tenants are being refunded. Some are suing. I visit sometimes. But I don't live there anymore. I never will again. That part of my life is done. The final confrontation wasn't with Morris. Or Kent. It was with myself. The part of me that wanted to crawl into silence. To let fear win. I looked that version of me in the eyes and told her to stand down. I found something deeper than safety. Purpose. The days after the courtroom confrontation passed in a blur of camera flashes, reporter questions, legal updates, and an overwhelming flood of people reaching out. Some to thank me, others to warn me. I thought I'd feel victorious. But what I felt was hollow. Renee stayed with me at the brownstone for a few days. She brought books, made tea, kept the mood light. But I could feel it, the heaviness in the air, the unspoken awareness that something had shifted in me permanently. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly one evening, stroking Willow's head as the dog lay curled between us. I didn't lie.
No.
But I'm getting there. The media frenzy died down by the third week. Morris was denied bail. Kent had gone into hiding. Interpol was actively tracing his last known locations: Luxembourg, Dubai, possibly Russia. I read about it all online numbly. Peter called often, always checking in, updating me, advising caution. He also offered something unexpected: a job. "There's an investigative journalism nonprofit I used to work with," he said. "They could use someone like you. Someone who doesn't scare easy." I told him I'd think about it. But I already knew the answer. I wasn't going back to the old Claire. Not the one who kept her head down, who let people decide her worth, who allowed herself to be gaslit into thinking she was overreacting. I'd been transformed by fire, and I wasn't afraid of the flames anymore. Still, I paid a price. I couldn't sleep without the lights on. Every creak, every camera lens, every unfamiliar noise made my skin crawl. Even in safe places, I felt watched. One night, I woke up to the sound of a soft beep. A notification. I groggily checked my phone. One new message. Unknown number. "You really thought it was over?" Attached was a photo. A street view. Of me, walking Willow from earlier that day. I stared at the image for a long time. At first, I panicked. Tears welled. My breath caught in my throat. But then, I looked deeper.
Zoomed in.
Saw the blur in the corner. The reflection in a window. The crooked angle of the shot. It was meant to scare me, but it was sloppy. Emotional. A scare tactic from someone losing control. I sent it to Peter immediately. He confirmed it came from a masked IP that had already been flagged. A known burner route, likely Kent, on the run and desperate. And I felt something I hadn't in weeks.
Pity.
Not for me, for him. Because he thought I'd still be the woman who ran, who crumbled under pressure. But I wasn't anymore. 3 months later I moved. Not in fear, but in choice. I bought a small fixer-upper just outside of the city. A safe neighborhood. Fresh paint. Good bones. No cameras in the ceiling. Renee helped me decorate. We painted the living room sea glass green. Hung wind chimes outside the kitchen window. Willow took to the yard like she'd lived there her whole life. I started writing again. Not just about what happened, but about housing corruption, data abuse, privacy rights, tenant protections. I spoke at panels, Zoom webinars, live interviews. My inbox flooded with survivors, whistleblowers, people whose voices had been drowned by fear. And every time someone asked me why I risked everything, I told them the truth. Because silence is more dangerous than speaking out. Still, some things haunt me. A few weeks ago, I found something in my mailbox. No return address. No note. Just a flash drive. I plugged it into my laptop carefully, on an encrypted sandbox. Inside, a single video file. Footage of me. Not new, old. From months ago. Me sitting on my couch in that old apartment. Reading. Laughing on the phone with Renee. Playing with Willow. Hours of it. My skin went cold. My pulse thudded. This wasn't from Morris. This wasn't from Kent. This was from someone else. I called Peter. Sent him the file. The metadata had been wiped. Whoever sent it knew exactly what they were doing. Peter's voice was tight when he called me back. This was recorded using a different system than Morris or Kent used. It's not from their server. Then who? I whispered. Silence. I don't know yet, he finally said. But Claire, this goes deeper. What you uncovered, it might have just been the surface. I should have felt broken. Instead, I felt focused.
Determined.
I had been chosen, whether I liked it or not, to walk a path that scared people into silence. But I wasn't silent anymore. I walked outside that night, barefoot in the dewy grass. Looked up at the stars. And I said it out loud, to whoever might be listening. You don't scare me. Not anymore. Because I wasn't just a survivor. I was the storm. And somewhere out there, someone was watching that clip, reading those words, studying my face, thinking they still had power. But they were wrong. Because for the first time, I wasn't alone. And they were the ones being watched. Final line. They tried to erase me. But now I'm the name they whisper in fear.